All right, we are live. Welcome, Ox.
Let me get on Twitter. What's going on, man? I haven't done this before.
Like what? Done a live
Like
stream?
live, like any part of me show. I did I mean, I've posted pictures, but nothing where it's like live because I could totally fuck this up and just dox myself and ruin it all, but that's what makes it fun.
Like so maybe for our audience, because this is live on my timeline, but I would assume my followers are seeing it maybe before yours have picked it up. Maybe give a background of who you are behind the cartoon image, and why it's important for you to maintain your anonymity.
So the guy behind this is I've been, not to get like total life story. For the reason to count fitness, I have been lifting now for almost a decade, played sports, all that, football, wrestling, baseball, the total typical, like, I don't know what most Chad dudes do in high school. Joined the military, went Army Special Operations. I won't get too specific because it's so small, but went Army Special Operations, and I was pretty good, but I cared about lifting way too much. So like I was always the slow guy.
Right.
So I was always the slow guy, but we had our coach was from all of our coaches were like LSU. I'll just throw out random colleges, so I'm not specific. LSU, Bama, everything. They were their former like strength conditioning coaches. So I spent all my free time with them.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, show me your ways. And it's funny that I learned a lot from them, but I used none of it because it was all like more functional, if we're going to use that. So I've been doing competitive bodybuilding now for, I want to say, 3 years competitively. I've worked with like everyone from like, most people know who these, like Jordan Peters, Dusty Hanshaw. Then I'm friends with like Hunter Labrada, like a lot of the top guys. Like I'm kind of just in that community. But because of my job, too, the anonymity thing is because it's crypto. And I don't want I talk about it so much, I don't want anyone knowing who I am. Because dudes are literally getting rolled up, kidnapped. And it's just not a good look. A lot of people are struggling too.
Right.
And I don't want to be here like, oh yeah, everything's great. Oh fuck yeah. And then next thing it's like, yeah, dude, I lost my job. Like, I think we could see a downturn in the world too with printing, supply, all that. So it's like the reason I'm anon is like I don't want to be associated with like, oh, he has crypto.
Sure.
We know he has. And then it's also my job. Half the stuff I said, I would be fired to. Well, I can't really get fired, but I would be like, I'd be fucked at work.
Why?
Because if I said online publicly, like, I think Joe Biden's an idiot. I love him on Twitter. I love him. Like that would be, that's commander in chief. Like I can't really have an opinion. That's the crazy thing about military. You can't really have an opinion unless it's like in line with what they want.
Unless it's Trump, then of course you can have the permitted opinion.
Orange man bad.
Right.
Orange man bad. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I didn't really think about an intro here. I was just like, so what kind of bro science are we going to talk about today?
Well, okay. So, I mean, that's something that can kind of kick this off for both of us. I can share the bro science. Maybe I'll share the bro science that kind of got me into creating my own Twitter account. And then you can share your bro science that, that you think is missing from most people's approach to fitness. So, for those of you who you may be following Ox before you followed me, you might not know that I used to be a little bit chubby. Now, I was a competitive athlete growing up, so I played baseball in college. I was, pretty lean when I was in school. But when I got done playing with reduced activity level and a lot more alcohol consumption, I ended up, gaining 10 or 15 pounds of fat. That I carried through my mid to late 20s without realizing I was actually that fat. I kind of convinced myself that I still look pretty decent. My journey kind of pivoted and skyrocketed when I ditched traditional methods for fat loss. So I used to run 5 miles, fasted every morning, 5 days a week, 4 to 6 miles, 5 days a week. And I started working with this guy named Woods, who was almost as strong as me. This was back when I was, repping 225 15 times on bench press. So maybe not a lot by competitive powerlifter standards, but a good amount by professional athlete standards, by professional baseball player standards. And I worked with a guy who was almost as strong as me, but he was much faster than me in conditioning. So he could run multiple miles at a low 6-minute pace back to back. And I thought, man, it'd be really cool to be able to do what Woods does. But I knew from speaking with my buddy's mom growing up, who's a pediatrician, that you don't burn more calories doing a fast mile versus a slow mile. And I knew from reviewing the exercise science that I did at the time that I would be burning fewer calories from fat, more calories from glycogen. And so for that reason, I did not expect any sort of aesthetic benefit from doing my cardio faster. But after a few weeks of running fewer miles but faster, despite the fact that I was burning fewer calories while I was training, fat just started melting off my body. And so rather than think, oh, this isn't supposed to happen, I'll just kind of go back to what I was doing, I thought, I'm going to push this because I've never realized that I could be as lean as I'm getting right now. And the cardio that I'm doing is a lot easier than the 4 to 6 miles that I used to run every day. From a diet standpoint, I never counted calories. I never went on a sissy salad diet, never was eating chicken, rice, potatoes, all this crappy bodybuilder food that people assume bodybuilders eat all the time. I was eating the delicious food that you see on my Twitter timeline, on my Instagram account, 100% delicious meals and large portions of them every single meal. And I was able to get down to 4% hydrostatic body fat from about 10, 11, 12 without ever going through a formal cut phase. Everything that I did from a training standpoint was purely intuitive. So I eat a lot more than what people would expect for my height and weight, and I train a lot less than what people would expect for how my body looks. And my genetics are the same as they were 10 years ago, probably worse because I'm older than I was 10 years ago. But my aesthetic results are better. And so I thought a few years ago, man, everybody's approaching this fitness thing wrong. If everybody realized that if you actually just prioritize a few things that you didn't realize were important and stop prioritizing the things that that other people think are important, fitness is a lot easier. So I started creating the account that I have, and that's obviously become quite popular over the last couple of years, where a lot more people are starting to realize that they can eat delicious food every meal of every day and still have abs year round.
That's your background and mine's kind of funny. I was here because, I was on Instagram. I was doing all the bodybuilders do, Instagram, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous what's out there. Like what people say you have to do. I can't count how many workout plans I see. It's like 5 sets of 10 bench press, 5 sets of 10 incline bench press, 5 sets of 10 dumbbell bench press, 5 sets of 10 this, 5 sets of 10. And I did that for the longest time. I
did that too, for those people who might be wondering. When I was 18 years old, that's kind of 19 years old, that's kind of the training plan that I would do.
It's all you know. It's all that you read about online. It's all that you see these guys that you look up to, these influencers. It's what they're doing. And you think that's it. And it's so until I was about 21, I was this high volume guy. I'm talking like, I'm thinking 40 sets per workout. Yeah. 9 exercises, 5 sets, like 40, 45. That wasn't outrageous. And
I was probably doing more, and so, but yeah, 40 sets is probably pretty common.
Yeah, absolutely. Some workouts, yeah, I'm touching 60 easily.
And five days a week? How many days a week?
I was going 6. I was doing
so you're doing 240 sets a week. Yeah.
And I stopped growing, completely stopped growing. I was about 190. I've always had like pretty decent genetics for building muscle, but 190, I stopped. And what I was doing what everyone else in the gym does. I go in there. Oh, this is what I think I did last time. I'm not Rain Man like you. I write it down. But this is what I think I was doing last time and whatever. And I'm being serious, for a year, 2 years, I did not grow at all. And it wasn't until I forgot what I was doing. I was like on Instagram. This dude's like dog crap. And I'm like, what is this? They're like, yeah, 1 set. It's like a rest pause. So it's kind of 3 sets, like 1 set, 1 exercise per body part, whatever. So I was like, what in the world is this? Like, no way. Like, that's the best way to lose gains. And I'm 190 pounds saying this to a 280 pound bodybuilder. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. So I tried it. I was just like, whatever. I was pretty much desperate at that point.
And before you get into those details, can you explain what rest pause is exactly? And how's that 3 sets versus 1 set? Like, what's the rest cadence and all that stuff?
So if I'm doing a rest pause set, I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, we'll just go in. I won't say bench because I don't bench, but incline bench.
That would make 2 of us.
Yeah, I like not having torn pecs. So let's say I'm going in and your goal on a rest pause set is 11 to 15 total. So you want to go in and find a weight that you can get for about 6 to 8 reps. You're going to walk that to failure. You get, say, 8. Mm-hmm. You rack it. You take 10 deep breaths. Mm-hmm. So it's about 22 seconds. Mm-hmm. Then you go back again. You get 4. So now you're at 12. Mm-hmm. Do it again, rack it, 10 breaths, and then you get it for 2. Mm-hmm. So now you're at a total of 14. You're 14 reps. For a weight, realistically, you could only get for 8, but you did it in a very short period of time for 14. I mean,
you're now, how much warming up are you doing before you hit that first set of 8?
I would say minimum three sets. Usually like 3 to 5, and we're talking. Yeah. I'll get close. Sometimes even I have on certain movements, I'll actually go over. Say I was going to do 315 on bench and try to get it for 8. Mm-hmm. I'll put on, 365 on the bar and do it for a single or a double, mm-hmm. and then rack it just because now I know I'm primed. I can handle the weight.
So you're warming up effectively like you were going to do a single rep max. Like you're fully 100% warmed up. Yeah. And I think that's actually an interesting thing that a lot of people don't do well. And how my program differs from a lot of conventional programs. Not to cut off, what you're talking about with your training, but I do a lot of warm-up sets too. I do about 4 warm-up sets before I do a working set. And so if you actually count, our warm-up sets, maybe we are doing a very similar amount of sets as most people, but most of those sets are sub-maximal, not to failure. They're done for the purpose of warming up, because I've noticed that even if I'm doing 4 warm-up sets, now I do 4 working sets per muscle group typically. Even after I do 4 warm-up sets, my best working sets at the same weight are going to be set 2 or set 3. They're not going to be set number 1, even after I've done 4 warm-up sets. So a lot of people don't warm up properly for their lifts. And this is actually why I do cardio first. I've noticed that a lot of times if I have a really good interval session 10, 15 minutes before my workout, I can actually lift heavier. So despite the fact that trainers will say, oh, do your cardio last, you're going to burn through your glycogen. It's like, yeah, you might be burning through your glycogen, but your body's not warmed up properly, chances are, unless you're approaching your warm-ups the way a competitive powerlifter or competitive bodybuilder would be. And let's be honest, are you? Okay, most likely you're not. So you're probably going to benefit from getting your heart rate up into the 180 range and then going through a dynamic warm-up before lifting.
Yeah, I won't even touch chest. I always do pec deck before chest. 2 sets, 12 to 15, 15 to 20. Super far away from failure, but just stick the blood in there. Mm-hmm. Because when you're properly warmed up, you're activating more of the muscle. I mean, you could even get into the science that you were actually activating more of the muscle. Mm-hmm. You can just feel it better. And I think a lot of people go in with the misconception of the only goal is to lift the weight. If you're not feeling the weight you're lifting, you could get results, but you're not really doing what you should be doing. If I'm going in and doing my set, I want to feel every fiber firing when I'm doing that, especially something like chest. I see a lot of guys neglect chest. They just do not know how to activate it. And the simple thing I've told them is picture that you were taking I mirrored. So it's like, which arm am I using? Picture that you were actually taking your bicep to your chest. Mm-hmm. You take that, you are forcing the chest to shorten. And that's a simple cue, but a lot of guys don't develop chest well. I think it's because they just don't feel it.
Yeah. So let's talk through the volume or lack thereof that's on your program. So you're doing 1 set to failure per muscle group or per exercise?
Oh, I'm not doing that. I've actually, so my training is it's a load set back off set. So we're going 6 to 10 ish. Yeah. And then we're dropping down 12 to 15 reps. That way we're taking advantage of because you've seen the rep continuum maximum or the rep maximum continuum, right? Where 6 to 20 is hypertrophy, but when you're doing 6 to 10, you're hitting more of that strength hypertrophy crossover. And then when you're at 12 to 15, you're starting to get into the endurance crossfit of that. And then 8 to 12 being that like pure hypertrophy. So the idea is your load set, 6 to 9, 6 to 10 reps. You're really taking advantage of not just pure hypertrophy, but the strength loading.
Sure.
You're working on getting the muscle actually stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And then you drop the weight, you up the reps, and then you're touching that 12, 15 to 20 reps. So you're actually taking advantage of, you're getting into metabolic stress. You're really, the premise is you are working that entire 6 to 20 rep range where hypertrophy happens, and your focus is getting as strong as humanly possible in that rep range. It's impossible to work in that rep range and get absolutely savagely strong and not grow.
Of course.
It's not low reps. It's not a neural adaptation. It's actually cross-sectional area growing in the muscle that makes that strength gain.
And I think that's what a lot of people miss. And I would say newbies, but also intermediate lifters, because oftentimes what I've noticed is that the lessons that people need to learn to go from beginner to intermediate are exactly the opposite of the lessons they need to learn to go from intermediate to advanced. So beginners to intermediate, you need to hit frequency, like you need to go and show up all the time because your body is just not neurologically adapted to move the weight. So you actually can't place a ton of neurological stress on your body when you're just getting started. And in some aspects, lifting weights your first year or two is like practicing. It's like you just need to practice the movements, just like shooting free throws. Like the best way to get better at shooting free throws is to shoot a lot of free throws. The best way to get better at lifting weights when you're new is to lift weights a lot. So your body is comfortable moving the weights in the manner that you'll ultimately need to do heavier. Now, once you get to that intermediate phase, 2 years, 3 years in, your body has become more neurologically adapted. You can move heavier weight, per pound of lean mass that you have. Then all of a sudden you can't work out with the same frequency and the same volume that you could when you were getting started. And a lot of times people will remember the first lesson that got them to point B, and to the exclusion of the lesson that they need to learn to get to point C, which is actually, no, you need to be able to lift heavier. And the only way you're going to lift heavier is by doing it less frequently, because your body cannot recover from increasing the weight and the volume without resting.
It's insane. People don't get, they just don't get, because I get asked all the time, people always want to add more frequency or volume. I'm like, no, you don't. You want and I always get super apprehensive because I cater to everyone. I'm catering to the beginner. This mirror mode is like really messing me up with my head. But I'm catering to the beginner and I'm catering to the advanced. So I put something like a push-pull legs plan out with the disclaimer of, hey, this is not for a beginner and intermediate. You should be getting into more advanced when you run this program.
Right.
And then I already know, because I put it out, every single person runs it. And I try so hard, because that's what you hit on is key there. Because an intermediate or a beginner, you don't need to be doing like a crazy amount. You need the frequency, like you said, and you need to be developing the movement patterns. I just wrote movement skills is a huge pillar of athleticism. So you don't need to go hit, like if I'm going to hit a push day, I'm going to do 2 isolation exercises for triceps, chest isolation, all that. A beginner, no, you do your compound movements, maybe 1 isolation, but you're done. Like that's it. You have now worked the muscle. You are just learning the movement patterns. You don't need to, because if I go in and I'm a beginner and I'm already doing a push-pull legs, or even worse, a bro split that is so specialized, it's because I always talk about minimum effective dose.
Yes.
So I can go in and I can do 2 sets of chest, or 2 sets of this chest exercise. We'll call it in the session 4 total. Assume we're going to work out 2 times a week, so 8 total sets per week. So if I can do that with my compound movements, I'm good. If you start out and you were doing 16 sets per week, in terms of progressive overload of sets, you're pretty much capped out. Anymore, you're not.
Right.
So it's always start with your beginner, your compound movements, get your biggest bang for your buck, learn how to properly do it. And then that's some people are like, oh, I've been doing this for 2 weeks. It's like, no, after like 2-3 years, then you can upgrade your split, because you will need it. Not because you want to, but because your body will actually need the additional stimulus. Right.
So over the course of a week, a normal week, not a deload week, normal week, how many sets of compound lifts are you doing? how many sets of accessory lifts are you doing, and I'm counting the 6 to 10 with the rest period followed by the, I think you said 12 to 20. I'm counting that as 2 sets. So how many total sets would you be doing across each bucket in a total week?
Oh, well, that is 2 sets. I'm taking between the 6 and 10, I'm taking 3 5-minute rest. Like that's not rep at all.
Okay. I got you.
I'm probably doing compound wise.
Yeah.
Maybe 4 to 6, maybe. Probably closer to 4 compounds. Accessory.
4 to 6. And I'm counting incline bench as a compound movement, and squats as a compound movement, and deadlifts as a compound movement. So you're doing 4 to 6 sets across all of those movements combined?
I'm trying to think. Yeah. So we're talking, if I'm going in to hit a push.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're talking total for like everything. I'm talking
everything per week. Yeah, not per workout, per week.
Oh, I was thinking individual body part.
Got you.
Compound. Oh, you're gonna make me do math here. So we'll call it 5 sessions per. I'm only doing 10 to 12. 10 to 12 sets of compounds per week total across the board.
Sure.
I might be give or take 4. We'll call it give, not take. I try to keep weekly volume per body part, including accessory, under 16. I will not do more than 16 sets per week. It's junk volume past that.
16 sets per body part or
per not even body part, muscle group. So push.
Got you.
Yeah, not, but it's getting extreme.
So 16 per, so 48 total then, if we're talking about 16 per muscle group, is that fair?
Yeah, that would
48 sets per week.
We're keeping it under 60 total sets per week. Yeah.
And that's probably about what, I'm trying to think, because part of my routine is a little bit shifted due to like the shoulder that I fucked up over the course of my 20s. But if I'm thinking about what I'm doing from lower body, I'm doing more lower body, lighter weight accessory movement. So yesterday I did 4 sets of deadlifting, which I would normally do. So 4 sets of dumbbell deadlifts. That's not barbell deadlift, so it's not going to be as CNS intense. I'm only using 140-pound dumbbells, whereas if I was using a barbell at that rep range, it'd probably be 365, something like that, 375. So at an 8 rep range. So I'm doing 4 sets of that, followed by 3 or 4 sets of just body weight Bulgarian splits, just to get some blood flow there, followed by 3 sets of RDLs, 3 sets of reverse hypers, 3 sets of adductors, 3 sets of hamstrings. So that's what, 12 sets. Yeah, it's like 20 sets total. And I'm going to hit an equivalent workout on squat day. So that's 40 sets total. And then, so I'm probably doing 70 sets. More of them are going to be lighter than what you're doing. From a compound movement standpoint, 4 sets of squats, 4 sets of deadlifts. If I was doing weighted bench press, you could, say 4 to 6 sets of that, as well as rows or pull-ups, 6 sets of that. So we're talking about 20 sets, which is a little bit more than you, because I'm not able to move the weight that you're moving, so my body can handle that. But yeah, like most people who've been training for 3, 4, 5 years, if you're doing more than that many sets per week, how the fuck are you recovering enough to get stronger?
If you're not looking forward to your rest day, you're probably not working out hard enough. Like my rest days, I need them. Yeah. It's not like, oh, it's a rest day today. It's like, thank God. And I love the gym more than anyone.
Right.
Oh God, I don't have to go to the gym. Tomorrow's my rest day. Thank God I have the day off.
Yeah.
And that's another key point that you were kind of hitting on earlier, is that as you're moving more weight, your nervous system is getting fried. Yeah. You cannot go, and I tweeted today about squats and deadlifts. I won't consecutively squat and deadlift if I'm going heavy, which I go heavy. Yeah. Because if I squat or if I deadlift on Tuesday and on Wednesday or Thursday, I'm going in to squat. No, my form is going to go to shit. Like I'm going to get under the bar and it's going to do all types of crazy stuff. Yeah. Because my back is fried. Right. And that's what I think a lot of people would just benefit to dial back the volume, dial everything back and just up their intensity.
Yes, that's totally. And a lot of times when people start doing my program, they're like, well, you want me resting 3 or 5 minutes in between sets? Like, what do I do? It's like, no. You're not lifting hard enough. If you don't know what to do, the 3 to 5 minutes in between your sets, you didn't go hard enough on the set that you just finished. Like, you need to get nearly everything that your skeleton is capable of producing, including like tensing the shit out of your core and your glutes for an upper body movement. Like, you need to fucking get every neurological impulse in your body to moving that weight such that you can't imagine getting under the bar again before 3 to 4 to 5 minutes from that set.
Dude, I have a running joke that every time I do hack squats, every single time, because I am, for whatever reason, I go sicko mode on hack squats. Like, there is something about the hack squat that I love. After my set of hack squat, I will go to the bathroom because they don't have benches or anything, and I will sprawl out like I'm leaning back on the toilet, sprawled out, because I'm dying, dude. So I do a Widowmaker set. It's just a set of 20 to failure.
It's just called Widowmaker. We don't really know why it's called Widowmaker, but don't worry about that.
I will legit sprawl out, and it's funny because I always think I got away with it this time. The burn, the lactate, it does not happen fast. I'm fine. I'm like, okay, cool. That wasn't bad. That wasn't bad. Then we're talking 90 to 120 seconds after the set. Boom, it hits, and I'm like, oh, it's like having a blowtorch to your legs.
Yeah, it's really interesting how training works like that, because I've noticed something very similar with my intervals. Like, because I use intervals 60 seconds on, 30 seconds off most of the time. And what's interesting is when I'm towards the end of that 60 seconds, I could go for another 10, 20, 30 seconds. But once I stop, it's like my body like wants to rest more than 30 seconds. It's just like the switch is turned off, and now it's like, okay, shit, I need to recover from what I just did. It would almost be easier if I just never stopped in my intervals and just kept going for 8 minutes consecutively. It wouldn't be easier, but it would almost be easier if I did that.
Do you still do any sprint intervals?
I shut down running last year when I started doing powerlifting. So before last year, my working sets for deadlifts never really got above 405. My working sets for squats never really got above like 315, 325. But once I started lifting in the 2, 3, 4 rep range, my knees just couldn't handle that plus running. So I shifted to doing more assault biking instead of actual sprinting, whether it was outside or on the treadmill. I found that both will get my heart rate up to a very similar amount, and the assault bike is a lot more joint friendly. And so once you guys are training at the level, that Ox is training or I'm training, it's not about just like doing the hard thing. It's about, what sort of cost is the hard thing putting on my body? What sort of stress is it putting on my knees? What sort of stress is it putting on my lower body? Okay, is this exercise the best relative to the bad things that it's going to do for my body? When most people get started, like, their bodies aren't used and abused enough to where anything that they do is going to really set them back. But if you're deadlifting 500 pounds on your working sets, you're doing RDLs at 365, 405 on your working sets. Like, you can't just stack that indefinitely together. You need to be smart about how much stress you're putting on your lower back and your knees and your hips.
Yeah, it's because it's funny. I get more heat from this than anyone on Twitter. I use machines, a lot of machines. I love barbells, I love dumbbells, I love cables, and I love machines. If it's in the gym, I like it because it helps. Like, I'm not like, oh, have to use barbells, they're the most efficient. And sometimes I don't know if the people that make these arguments are really, well, they're not. They're just saying it because they heard it. But they're like, well, if you're doing machine shoulder press, like, your stabilizers, blah, 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 they're throwing out these words. And I'm like, do you know what they're like? I'm like, do you know what you mean by this? To be like, yeah, you're going to lose growth. You're not using stabilizers on your shoulders. You're using a machine. I'm like, okay, that's a very valid point. But if your goal is hypertrophy, if I am using a more stable apparatus, I can actually load the muscle better and create more mechanical tension. And it comes back to what you're saying, safety. There's no reason, especially when you start getting into the 600s, the 500s on squats, like, it gets to a point where there is an ROI where every single time I go do that, one wrong movement, I'm done. Like, I'm done.
Right.
And so a lot of people are like, you do a lot of leg press, you do a lot of hack squats, but like, I want big legs, so I'm not going to do that. When I'm like, okay, do you want to see my legs?
Yeah.
It's safer. The
Right.
ROI, and I try to harp on this because the problem is, and I get it, I'm sure you're the same way. I want to teach people how to work out,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to give them the mind frame to create their own workouts. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to tell you
Right.
how to work because you can't. Because my body and we're both exceptionally in shape. How I train and how you train, we couldn't do it the same.
Right.
There are way too many differences between us. So
Right.
I try to give people the framework. And if there was one thing I could boil into people's heads, it's when you're going in to do an exercise, don't do it because you think you have to or XYZ reason. Actually know why.
Right.
Actually deductively do the risk reward. Is this safe and effective? Am I playing to my strengths or not? So I think a lot of people don't understand too the things like length of actual bones come into play. And a
Mm-hmm.
guy will be like, I can't squat. And then their femurs aren't made for squatting. And they're
Right.
like, what do I do? And I'm like, oh, just leg press or hack squat, Bulgarian split squats,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. They're like, yeah, but I'm going to lose out on gains because I'm not squatting. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
brother, no, it's a game of tension and load. If you
Mm-hmm.
put tension and load on the muscle, you'll grow. They're like, yeah, but squats is the best. I'm like, but is it?
Right.
Because there's 1,000 ways to skin this cat. Your muscle does not know that there's not a barbell on your back and you're squatting it. They just know, oh, we're under stress. There is weight, and then chemical processes that I will not bore everyone with happen, and you grow.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing I want to drive home to people is that there's nothing you have to do. You are not married to any type of training. And as you train, your training will change.
Mm-hmm.
What worked for me 2 years ago, what worked for me 6 months ago doesn't work anymore.
Right.
There's variables of training I have to change because at the end of the day, too, I'm not going to be able to progressively overload my deadlift indefinitely. I'm probably relatively close to the point of like, it's time to just go do something else because today I pulled and it was ugly. I don't even want to talk about it.
I heard you talk about it, but I couldn't. I never saw a video of it, so I don't know what that actually what it means.
I was solo. So there's a fireman there, and he watched it, and I was like, "That was horrible." He was like, "Actually, no, your back did arch, but like, not that bad." But in my head, from the feel, I was like,
Right.
"Oh, this was," because I was hitching. It was bad. But someone, and I'm such a hypocrite because I was like, "Don't ever 1 rep max. You're gonna hurt yourself. Don't lift with your ego. If you want to build muscle, don't 1 rep max." But yeah, I did it. And I was like, yep, that's why I don't do this. That is why I work in higher rep ranges.
I think my 1 rep maxing days are over. Last year, I was trying to hit 600 just because I hit 500 and I was like, well, I might as well try to hit 600. But I think the ROI for that just isn't for me there. Partially, I mean, one part's because of my knees. My knees just don't like, doing working sets in the high fours every week on deadlifts. But they seem to feel just fine when I'm doing working sets in the low fours every week or most weeks. But then the other thing is because I have shoulder immobility from getting surgery on my diving shoulder in college and lifting on it without regaining full range of motion when I was too stupid to realize how important that was. 100% of my movements are compromised. So what that means is if I'm pulling weight off the ground, because I don't have symmetrical mobility in my left and right shoulders, I also will not have I'll be placing asymmetric load on my spine. And so what that means is the stronger I get, the more I will likely develop some degree of functional scoliosis or exacerbate functional scoliosis, which could manifest itself in terms of possibly greater risk for spinal injuries, but then also nerve damage or like nerve pinching it just doesn't sound like it's worth throwing an extra 50 pounds on my deadlift in exchange for that. Particularly because I don't think I'm going to be entering any sort of powerlifting contest anytime soon. I'm mainly just lifting because I like to lift, and my body composition is not going to change meaningfully if I never deadlift 600 pounds. So I'm just probably not going to ever do it.
Dude, it's so funny because I have a few shows coming up next year, but in the last year, my lifts have exploded in number.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I'm like, did I choose the wrong sport? Is it time to forego all dietary restriction and become a power lifter? Do I carry the bag of gummy bears to the gym? Because what's funny is my bench press, it's not that impressive. I think I could touch 405 for one. Squat and deadlift. I hadn't squatted the other day in probably a year.
Mm-hmm.
I threw 500 on the bar and I was like, oh, this feels great. So I'm like, I should probably just be a power lifter. But
that's crazy. I mean, your back, that might not have been the safest thing for your back if you hadn't done it in a year and you're like, oh, 500, that sounds good.
It didn't. I had no soreness the other day. My quads were, but
sure.
Hack squat doesn't load the same, obviously.
Sure.
But I want to say nothing felt off. And I was telling my wife this, from going from machine to free weight, the form was perfect. It was crazy. Mm-hmm. It was much more controlled. And I think it's because I definitely had some training scars from previously, just some form ticks that just habits built in. Almost taking the time off, I had to, and then using machines, which are in a fixed plane and a very fixed range of motion, almost like it fixed my form in a sense, that it was so almost mechanical, just methodical, the way I went up and down. So
it's almost like because your range of motion was restricted, you actually couldn't cheat, and you couldn't let certain muscle groups take the work of weaker muscle groups because of the restricted range of motion. It forced you to work your body more evenly.
Because you've seen the dudes that squat, let's say their backs like this, and I'm trying to, okay, I can't really. They do the whole like they hitch up. It becomes almost like a good morning.
Good morning, yeah.
So I used to have a degree of that, not like what you see sometimes, but like a small degree of that. I was uptight, just up and down. But yeah, I don't know if I'll be squatting anymore. It's just the ROI. Again, I can explode my legs with machine-based movements. And then I do things like Bulgarian split, because I know you talk about this all the time. Unilateral movements are huge. Absolutely huge. I had a question for you. Yeah. So I get asked this all the time. My guidance is always, if you're having some type of imbalance, some asymmetric movement, using unilateral movements that's always been my suggestion. Now, my question for you is, let's say that I'm dumbbell pressing and my left arm can get 9 reps. Well, we'll make this kind of extreme. I can get 12 reps on the left arm, right arm can get 8. Would you then train both sides to 8 reps, even though you could do more on the left arm? Or what would be your approach there? That's always kind of been a debate I've had with people.
So the question is, why is there that difference?
That's actually absolutely, that's the better question. I've noticed with some people there's a structural imbalance there, or there was an injury, or there was something, and it's never going to be the extreme that I made it right there of like,
yeah, it's not. It's usually gonna be 1 or 2 reps, not 4.
But if it was simply that the dude just is stronger on the left side,
yeah.
What would you do where you just cut reps at the same length, or would you still go to failure with at 10 on the left and 9 on the right, or what would be your, I guess, prescription for that issue?
So it depends if there's an underlying injury, right? And so like my body's a good example. My left shoulder doesn't glide the way my right shoulder does. So if I'm doing, say, a single arm lat pull down, I could load the same amount of weight for my right or my left shoulder, but it's actually going to take more work for me to do it on my left side than my right side, because my joint just doesn't like move as well. So if I'm loading up 80 pounds or whatever I'm going to do on a single arm, effectively for my left arm, because of the resistance that my own body is contributing to, that might be closer to 90 pounds. Whereas on my right side, it's actually 80 pounds. And so I'm okay with mildly divergent rep ranges, because my body is what's creating the differential, and I'm actually getting similar muscular tension, if I'm doing a slightly different rep range for the same muscle group. Now, if there's no underlying injury, I don't think you want to let that difference get beyond like 2 reps out of a set of 8 or 10. I think it's okay to let it go 1 rep, because fine, like a 1 rep imbalance isn't that big of a deal. But if you let it go to like 3 or 4 reps, then what you're going to end up doing is just creating an asymmetric body. Your spine is going to ultimately be the thing that's moving to compensate for that muscular imbalance. You're probably going to put yourself at greater risk for injury down the road.
Yeah, that's probably the best answer I've gotten so far with this, because a lot of trainers are just like, yeah, you just like cut it off the same at the same reps and it'll work itself out over time. But that makes a lot of sense. And it comes down to also, if you're doing a unilateral movement, are you cardiovascularly tired because
Sure.
you did 9 reps and now you only got 8? And that's why I'm big on session to session variation.
Mm-hmm.
If I started right leg on a single leg press, I'm going left leg next session. And because my training has to be standardized. I'm a robot when it comes to this. Like, same conditions. I have my logbook and I'm sitting there writing like, oh, the machine was at notch number 2. And a lot of people don't realize that's actually, when you get to a certain level, that actually becomes really important, because let's say you're going at this incline versus this incline.
Oh, it's a meaningful difference.
That's
because if you get 1% better than the week before, like, you should try to figure out, what the hell did I do to get that extra 1%? Was it because I changed how I ate, or changed the conditions that I slept in, or was it just because the incline was different on the bench? I actually didn't get 1% better.
I feel like you're like me, that you are just completely not neurotic, but obsessive to an extent of like the feedback system.
Yes.
Like, oh, this worked. Like, because it's really, and I see a lot of this with younger guys. It's a rush process, and they'll get their newbie gain. So it can be, in a sense, that happening really quick. But once you get to our level, you have to crawl and scratch for everything. For 5 pounds, you got to crawl and scratch. To put on, like, a newbie, 20 pounds of muscle in a year, I've seen it happen all the time.
Oh, yeah.
For me, 20 pounds of muscle in a year, yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
Unless
8 years. If you get that in the next 8 years, you'd be like, yeah, it's not bad.
I think I've read somewhere, I don't agree because I don't think it's linear like this at all, but it's 50% every year. So 20 pounds your first year, second year, 10 pounds, 5 pounds the next year, and then it keeps on cutting in half. I don't believe it's that linear, and there's too much to go into it. But like, is a general rule of thumb, I'm like, you got to understand newbie gains, substantial.
I think it's probably closer to 70%, by the way.
I would say that's yeah, I would agree with that 100%, because you're not gaining 10 pounds your next year. If you gain 20, you're going to get 5 to 8 pounds. You are not getting.
No, I think you can get more.
What?
70. I think you can go 20, 14, 10, 7, 5.
I did something wrong.
Well, 20 pounds is a lot to gain your first year, too. I think most people are not gaining 20 in their first year. They might gain like 12. And so then it's like 12, 8.5, 6, 4.
You're catching me in my bias again, too, because of who I train with and who I'm around on a general basis. I'm working with typically genetic outliers.
Sure.
So I forget. But yeah, I did everything wrong, though. So that's why, to me, I wish I had a good benchmark to tell people of like, hey, per year you can gain this. I don't know, because I did everything wrong my first 5 years.
Yeah. So, well, most people did. You don't realize that you have to do things right until you get close to your genetic peak. And because if you're getting close to your genetic potential, you will not get better unless you figure out how to not do the thing that you were doing wrong. You can't just like do more and train harder. Right? Or like when you get to the end of your 20s, you can't just like do more and train harder. That doesn't work. You need to figure out, what are like transformative adjustments that I can make that will make everything easier. How can I sleep better? How can I sleep more? So people are like, oh, you can't gain muscle and lose fat at the same time. Like, yes, you can. Have you tried sleeping better? Because if you sleep better, you can work out harder. And if you can work out harder, you can gain muscle and lose fat at the same time.
I feel like that is a little bit of a difference in our approach. But I do the recomp. I talk about it all the time. If you add new stimulus in, you can do it. If you go from training high volume and training half-assed, and now you dial it in, because I experienced this last year. My training I was not targeting correctly, just on certain exercises, and I had a coach, and so it's in video feedback, and he got me dialed in to where the execution of my lifts were perfect, and I was putting on muscle again while losing fat, simply because of the new stimulus.
Right.
I always tell people, though, pick a goal of like, do you want to cut? Do you want to bulk? For efficiency. of, I think if you can go point A to point B, like on a bulk, and then you cut, I think you will ultimately, but it also comes down to, are you going to do everything right? I can cut and bulk correctly. When I
Right,
cut,
but that's the thing is most people won't. And so what I tell people is if you're trying to get on stage, so there's very, very different parameters by which you will be judged by compared to what I try to target and what most people in the general public try to target. So if your goal is to win on stage, right, you are going to do things that sacrifice long-term results for the benefit of a short-term outcome. So you will go through significant caloric restriction for several weeks leading up to your event. You will get your body into a place that you cannot sustain year round because you're willing, and you're probably going to go through some degree of hormonal damage or endocrine disruption to get to being that lean at that body weight so you can look good on stage. It doesn't make sense for me to go through those, to go through that trade-off because I'm never going to get on stage. I have no desire to. I wouldn't win if I was on there. I just want to look like pretty good year round and enjoy my time in the gym. And so for that reason, it doesn't make sense for me to go through a more traditional bulking cutting phase. It actually just makes sense for me to always increase my athleticism because if I can always get stronger or faster, I will always be able to add lean muscle or lose fat, depending on which of those two things I'm improving on at that very time. And I think most people who have no intention of getting on stage and just want to like look better, add some lean muscle and cut fat, should actually be doing more of an athletic-based program, not because it will work better than a traditional bodybuilding program, but because it will not give them unnecessary hormonal damage from going through very meaningful caloric restrictions, and it's more fun. It's just more fun to be able to track your lifts and you know do your movements safely, obviously, but see that you're going up in weight. I just think for the non-psychos who need, and I would include myself in the non-psycho bucket for this, I'm not going to just go through pain in my training. I want it to be rewarding for me. And so there's just, you know, the way that I approach training, the way that I work with other people to approach training, we're probably leaving about 15 pounds of lean muscle off the table from where we could be. But the trade-off is the plan feels more enjoyable. It feels more sustainable. And most of us, it doesn't really make a difference if we're leaving 15 pounds of lean muscle on the table.
See, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I didn't really explain that. I don't think anyone should ever cut as hard as I cut. Like you don't need to. And it's not fun. And yeah, a lot of people don't know that. Like they see the pictures and they see the smiles. When you're 6'5", 4", I think I was 3 point. I was getting close to essential fat levels.
Yeah.
You want to die.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, you wake up. I always say when I get below 6% body fat, I can drink a pot of coffee and it does nothing. There's just no energy. My body has no energy.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing. So yeah, I definitely don't think. And when I say cut and bulk too, I'm huge on. I think a lot of people actually, like in the fitness world, would call what I was saying a recomp almost. Okay. Because my caloric deficits, I don't like going over 500 with anyone. 200, 300 to 500. Like we're not going insane. Because guys do, and I see it too often. 1,000 calorie deficit, 1,500. They're like, oh, I've heard you can do 2,000 safe. I'm like,
what?
I'm like, no. First of all, no. They're like, yeah, my TDEE is 3,500 and I'm going to eat 1,500 calories. No, you don't need to do that. And they don't realize their fat loss is actually going to be slower.
Yeah.
If you're in a 200, 300, 500 calorie deficit, you're not going to have major metabolic downregulation.
Sure.
It's just simply people confuse they lose NEAT with, oh, my metabolism slowed down. It's like, no, you went from sitting like this to sitting like this. You're now starting to like rest that's hundreds of calories a day that you will just naturally do when you're in a caloric deficit. Your body's hungry. You need energy.
Sure. Your brain also is not, going to be using as much energy either because everything and I've actually found this, and this kind of bleeds more into self-improvement. Like the human body and the human brain is tremendous at energy regulation. So a lot of times ideas that you think are good are actually just ideas that require your brain to do less work. And your brain in its strategy of not working has convinced you that the idea that requires it to work the least is actually the best idea, but it's actually just an energy management trick that your mind is playing on you. And your body does the same thing. Like if you're not feeding it well, you're going to figure out ways to just be lazy on a lot of different things, so you're not going to burn the calories.
Yeah, that's why. And when people come to me for diets, and they're like, "Yeah, what should I cut my calories to?" I was like, "We're not going to touch your calories." Actually, no. People really get surprised because they'll come to me, and I up their calories, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Why are we eating more food?" I'm like, "Dude, you were under eating." Like,
Yeah.
a lot of people underestimate. I would say the average the TDEE of a person is 3,000 to 3,500 calories. Generally speaking, I think that'd be roughly, we'll say 28 to 3,500, because generally a 200-pound male, 180-pound male is going to need close to 300 calories, assuming they do anything during the day.
Sure.
Like they're not just chilling on the couch.
Sure.
And people come to me, they're like, "I'm eating 1,700, 1,800, and I'm stuck. I'm not losing weight." I was like, "Well, we're going to make a little bit of a sacrifice short term.
Yeah.
The next 2 weeks, we're going to work our way back up to, let's say we did it, that we calculated out 3,500. We're going to reverse diet you up back to 35, close to 3,500. And then congratulations, when you diet now, you can eat 32, 3,000 calories and you can lose fat."
Right.
And then once I get them there, and they, of course, you will stall on weight loss generally. I love steps. Guess what? Instead of walking 7,000 steps a day, we're going to do 8,000. We're going to do 9,000. We're going to do 10 minutes more, whatever cardio we're doing. We're going to do this. And they're like, "Oh, wow, it's working. I'm losing a ton of weight." I do not like to touch people's food. You lose so much when you take out people's food. And I've noticed in bodybuilding, guys that cut food before adding cardio look worse. You can just see it. They over dieted.
Right.
There's just a different look when someone doesn't have the calories in them.
Right.
So, keeping food high is so important to me.
Right. And I kind of figured that with what I'm doing from a diet and recipe standpoint, I knew that it worked for me, but before I actually released my content and found out that it worked for a lot of other people, I'd have people DMing me like, "Hey, what do you think I should do for this? What do I think I should do for that?" And the people who are the worst in my experience are the MMA guys, because if you're doing MMA, you need to be eating like many, many thousands of calories per day, but it's in a weight class sport. So they're all afraid to like not be within cutting distance of their weight class. And so I remember this one guy named Gary reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, I'm eating like chicken and rice for lunch, got like 6 ounces of chicken, some rice. And then, for dinner, I'm eating like 8 ounces of chicken and rice. And then for breakfast, I eat like 3 eggs." I'm like, you're training 4 hours a day and you're consuming like, I'm pretty sure what you told me, that's like 1,200 calories. So, so here's what we're going to do. Eat steak because it has more fat in it. Maybe double the amount that you're eating, and then just see how that goes. And he's like, "Oh, I don't know, man. I need to stay within this weight class." I'm like, "Just try it." Well, 3 weeks later, he's like, "At first I thought you were full of shit, but like my energy level is through the roof. I'm stronger than I've been in as long as I can remember, and I'm leaner." It's like, yeah,
man,
feeding the machine.
You're actually eating what you need.
Yeah.
It's insane. I couldn't imagine doing MMA and all that. Especially back whenever I was doing more athletic based, for training for special operations stuff. Dude, if I didn't eat 6,000 calories, I was stupid. I was stupid. And what's funny is I would get, if I ate less, let's say I'm struggling, I'm getting 2,000, 3,000 a day, I look doughier. It's tough to explain, but you know what I'm talking about. You look worse.
I think it's the lack of sodium, or I don't actually know that much about diet manipulation for the purpose of a particular photo shoot. So like I did a photo shoot for a lot of the stuff that I have on my ebooks, but I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just like, I'm like 4% body fat. Might as well take some pictures right now. Oh, I'll go get like a fake tan, and then maybe I'll cut carbs for a few days. Who knows? Well, after a few days of cutting carbs, I noticed my muscles just didn't look full. So I was like, fuck that. I'm just gonna eat normally. And so like I don't actually know how you're supposed to manipulate your diet for a particular photo shoot like tomorrow.
Oh, dude.
But it probably has to do with that. Like your muscles might not have enough sodium in them or something, so they just look like they're deflated.
No, you hit it. You're looking worse because of glycogen. Because
Yeah.
if your muscle is, because you think about abs. Abs is a muscle. So if your muscles are flat, they're, they went from big to fucking small because they lost their glycogen. It's not pressing up against the skin anymore.
Yes.
The skin in the subcutaneous water will actually look worse.
Right.
Yeah, that's what it is. Prepping for a show, salt, cutting your salt, no carbs for a week, depleting the glycogen, and then you get the glycogen super compensation where up to the show, it's disgusting what some guys eat because they'll be backstage pounding. What it is really is Rice Krispies. Everyone does Rice Krispies because they taste delicious. They're starving, but pure sugar, pure glycogen, quick, and it's rice based. So everyone digest it well. Because last thing you want to do is hop out on stage after getting 800 grams of carbs, but you did it with
bloated.
You're sitting there with a food baby.
Yeah.
So Rice Krispies. My dog says hi, by the way.
That's cool. Hi, Ox Dog.
But yeah, it's glycogen, which is the most important thing in your body, and everyone's afraid of carbs, but glycogen is awesome.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried going low carb?
Well, I'm halfway low carb right now. I mean, I tried going keto for a couple of weeks.
I guess that's what I was asking. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've experimented with a lot of intermittent fasting, keto, whatever. I did keto 3 years ago for like a week. And I noticed I got leaner. I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. I noticed that my lifts were just really hard, but I didn't go down in weight. I was actually still able to lift the same amount the first week going on keto. So I'm like, well, all right. I mean, I'll try it. Like I'm not getting weaker, even though I feel weaker. I'm actually not. Well, week 2, I was weaker. I was not able to lift the weights that I was previously able to. So then I just decided, fuck this. Like if the diet is limiting my ability to perform in the gym, the most important thing for like the way, and what I tell people in my group classes and I work with one-on-one, the way I judge diet is what gym performance it results in. Mm-hmm. Right? How do I know if I'm eating enough? How's your training? How do I know if I'm eating too much? How's your training? How's your conditioning? If you're eating more and your training isn't getting better, then you're probably eating too much. Because at some point, if you eat more, your body needs to put energy into processing that food. And so if you've already hit what you need to eat from a nutritional standpoint, and then you eat more of it, your performance will likely decline. So, what we do is, how do I know if I'm not eating enough? It's like, well, are you lifting heavier? Okay, you're eating enough. Your body will not be able to lift heavier weights if you're not eating enough. And a lot of people miss that. They try to get super scientific on the diet. It's like, no, you need to use one to measure the other. You cannot look at one in isolation and say that's good. That works.
Can you please just tweet that every single day on a whatever scheduled tweet?
Like the Alexander Cortez with like a diet in a gym. It's like,
are you eating for your performance? Because that's what I don't have a problem. I asked that because I've done keto and I didn't really have a problem with it. And I actually felt at times of the day sharper. But yeah, when it comes to performance, I did find something. I was more focused and clear, but without carbs, I didn't have the moments of like real intense
correct
cognitive activity, we'll call it. Like it was very stable, but there wasn't that like burst of like creativity, ideas, like hyper focus. It was just more of a subtle focus all day. But in the gym, dude, it was traumatizing. I did it for 3 months. I was cutting it's back when I did know what I was doing. We'll call it 5 years ago. Traumatizing. Like and the big thing too is a lot of people miss out on electrolytes. Mm-hmm. And I learned quickly because keto, a lot of people aren't getting electrolytes on that. I learned quickly that I would have to eat a pickle. I didn't even know why I was doing it. I knew I needed salt. Yeah. But I was like, oh, if I don't have a pickle before the gym, I don't get a pump. Right. And I wasn't getting pumps anyway without the carbs. And that was something that, sure, it's easier. It's almost easier to eat in a sense because you're restricted. And you do notice right away because you're especially for bodybuilding, you notice because you're not holding water from carbs. Mm-hmm. So you look better, but yeah, the performance in the gym tanks. And that's why I love that you said that, because gym performance is the biggest predicting factor of how well. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I had an auto update for Evernote, so my computer just like shut off. But yeah, your performance in the gym is going to be your biggest predictive factor of your outcome in the gym. 100%.
Yes, 100%. Well, Ox, we're approaching an hour, and I know this was awesome. I think everybody on the listening end loved it too. We'll cut it in an hour, and we'll do it again at some point in the next several weeks to keep everybody interested and learning more bro science.
Yes, dude, and I'll actually have a mask this time instead of a. I can't see. I'm wearing sunglasses. Like I can't see you right now.
Oh, that's all good. Well, we can't see you either, so it's the feeling's mutual.
They're so fogged, but I'll have a cool mask next time. But I appreciate you having me on. This was fun. Like,
this was legit.
Out, so
we'll make it a recurring thing.
Yes, please.
All right, Ox. Peace out.
Have a good one. How do I exit? Okay, we're gonna like click.